I stared at the mysterious letter in my hand, my heart racing with every word. Your husband is not who you think he is. Meet me at the old coffee shop at midnight if you want to know the truth. Suddenly, my perfect marriage didn't seem so perfect after all. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Who could have written this letter, and what did they mean? I thought back to all the times my husband had been acting strange, but I had always brushed it off as stress from work. As I stood there, frozen in shock, my mind started racing with all sorts of possibilities. Was my husband having an affair? Was he in some kind of trouble? Or was this just some kind of sick prank? I looked around the room, feeling like I was living in a dream. Everything seemed normal. The furniture, the pictures on the wall, the flowers on the table. But nothing felt normal anymore. As I stood in my office, staring at the mysterious letter, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Who could have written this? And what did they mean by saying my husband was not who I thought he was? I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to the letter. I felt like I was in a daze, going through the motions of my day without really being present. As the day drew to a close, I packed up my things and headed home. The letter was still clutched in my hand, and I couldn't help but wonder what secrets it might hold. As I walked home, I felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything seemed unclear, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that my whole world was about to be turned upside down. As I walked through the front door of our apartment, I was greeted by the warm glow of the living room lights. My husband, John, was sitting on the couch watching TV. He looked up and smiled as I came in. "Hey, how was your day?" he asked, getting up to give me a kiss. I forced a smile, trying to push the thoughts of the mysterious letter out of my mind. "It was fine," I said. "Just a long day at work." John nodded sympathetically. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked. I hesitated, wondering if I should tell him about the letter, but something held me back. Maybe it was the uncertainty of what the letter meant, or maybe it was the fear of what John's reaction might be. I decided to keep the letter a secret, at least for now. I didn't know what to make of it, and I didn't want to accuse John of anything without being sure. So I pushed the letter to the back of my mind and tried to act normal. We had a quiet dinner together, watching TV and chatting about our day. John seemed perfectly normal, and I found myself wondering if I had just imagined the whole thing. Maybe the letter was just a prank or a mistake. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept looking at John, trying to read his expression, but he just seemed like his usual self. As we got ready for bed, I felt a sense of unease. What if the letter was true? What if John was hiding something from me? After an uncomfortable night, I woke up feeling anxious and on edge. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I got ready for work, I couldn't shake the sense of unease that lingered inside me. As I arrived at the office, I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to the mysterious letter and the doubts that had been plaguing me. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, waiting for something to happen. Just as I was starting to settle into my routine, my boss, Mr. Smith, called me into his office. I felt a surge of anxiety as I got up from my desk and made my way to his office. What did he want to talk to me about? As I walked into my boss's office, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. He looked up at me from behind his desk, and our eyes met for a brief moment. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I sensed a hint of knowing in his gaze. It was as if he knew something I didn't, something that made him look at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. I felt a surge of anxiety as I wondered if he knew about the mysterious letter. "Ah, come in," he said, his voice neutral. "I wanted to talk to you about something." I sat down in the chair in front of his desk, trying to compose myself, but my mind was racing with questions. Did he know about the letter? Was he involved in some way? As he began to speak, I found myself tuning out his words, my attention focused on his body language and tone. Was he hiding something from me? "So, have you received any strange letters lately?" my boss asked, looking at me directly. I felt a jolt of surprise, and my heart started racing. How did he know? I tried to play it cool, but I could feel my face growing hot. What do you mean? I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. My boss leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, he said. A letter that might have made you question some things. I felt like I was trapped with no way out. Did he know about the letter? And if so, how did he know? How do you know about the letter? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My boss leaned back in his chair, a hint of a smile on his face. Let's just say that I have my ways, he said. But I think it's time we had a frank discussion about what's going on. I felt a surge of anxiety, unsure of where this conversation was headed. Was my boss involved in some way? And what did he mean by what's going on? My boss leaned forward, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. If you really want to know what's going on, meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street tonight at 7 p.m. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I processed his words. What could he possibly want to tell me that was so secretive? And why did he want to meet me outside of the office? Be careful, he added, his eyes glinting with a warning. You don't know who might be watching. With that, he nodded and dismissed me, leaving me to wonder what I had just got myself into. I arrived at the coffee shop at 7 p.m. sharp, looking around nervously for my boss. He was already there, sitting in the back corner and sipping on a cup of coffee. As I approached him, he looked up and nodded for me to sit down. I slid into the chair across from him, feeling a sense of trepidation. So what's this all about? I asked, trying to sound calm. My boss leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. I know you received a letter, he said. A letter that made some pretty serious accusations about your husband. I felt a jolt of surprise, but I tried to keep my cool. What do you know about it? I asked. My boss hesitated, glancing around the coffee shop nervously. I know that the letter is just the tip of the iceberg, he said. There's something much bigger going on here. Something that could put you and your husband in danger. I'm the one who sent you the note, my boss said, his eyes locked on mine. I felt a surge of surprise and my mind racing with questions. Why? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. My boss leaned forward, a hint of a smile on his face. I wanted to get your attention, he said. I wanted to meet with you alone without any distractions. And I knew that if I just asked you to meet with me, you might not come. He paused, studying me for a moment. So I decided to take a more unconventional approach, he said. I dropped the note on your desk, hoping it would pique your interest. I couldn't help but feel a little annoyed at being manipulated, but at the same time I was curious about what my boss wanted to talk to me about. I'm struggling to understand why you felt the need to send me a mysterious note that would inevitably cause tension in my personal life, I said. Couldn't you have simply asked me to meet with you privately without resorting to a method that would raise so many questions and concerns? My boss looked at me with a mixture of surprise and understanding. I apologize if my methods were insensitive, he said, but I assure you my intentions were pure. I needed to speak with you about something that's been on my mind for a while now. He paused, collecting his thoughts before continuing. This has nothing to do with the company or your work performance, he said. It's something more personal. My boss took a deep breath before speaking. I have to admit, I've had feelings for you for a long time, he said, his voice low and sincere. I know it may seem inappropriate, given our professional relationship, but I couldn't help the way I feel. I was taken aback by his confession, unsure of how to respond. Part of me was flattered by his admission, but another part of me was uncomfortable with the idea of my boss having romantic feelings for me. My boss's confession caught me off guard, and I felt a surge of discomfort. I'm flattered, but I'm married, I said firmly, trying to shut down the conversation. My boss nodded understandingly, but his eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief. I know that, he said, his voice low and smooth, and I respect that. But I have to ask, are you truly happy in your marriage? Or are you just going through the motions? I felt a pang of defensiveness, but my boss's words struck a chord. Was I truly happy in my marriage? Or was I just settling for a comfortable routine? My boss leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. I'm not asking you to leave your husband or to compromise your values, he said. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that there's more to life than what you're currently experiencing. More passion, more excitement, more connection. He paused, studying me intently. I know that I can offer you that, he said, his voice filled with conviction. I know that I can make you feel alive in a way that you haven't felt in years. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I met my boss's gaze. His words were like a siren's call, tempting me to explore the unknown. I looked my boss straight in the eye, my voice firm and resolute. I appreciate your honesty, but I'm committed to my marriage and I won't compromise my values, I said. I value our professional relationship, but I need to make it clear that I'm not interested in pursuing anything romantic. My boss nodded slowly, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. I understand, he said, and I respect your decision. Please know that my intentions were genuine, and I hope we can still maintain a positive working relationship. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Of course, I said. I appreciate your understanding. As I stood up to leave, my boss called out to me. Can I ask one more thing? He said. I turned back to him, curious. What is it? I asked. My boss smiled wryly. Just be honest with yourself, okay? He said. Make sure you're truly happy in your marriage, and not just settling for comfort and routine. I nodded, feeling a pang of self-doubt. Was I truly happy in my marriage? I smiled warmly, feeling grateful for my wonderful marriage. I am living a very happy life, I said. I have a loving husband who makes me feel cherished and supported every day. Yesterday was a difficult day for me, but it's not because of my marriage. It's because of the note you left on my desk. My boss's expression changed, and he looked slightly embarrassed. I apologize if my note made you uncomfortable, he said. That was not my intention. I was uncomfortable because it made me wonder what was going on, I said. But I know my husband, and I trust him completely. I'm sure he would never do anything to hurt me. My boss nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad to hear that you have a strong and trusting relationship with your husband, he said. That's truly admirable. It was my story, and don't forget to like and subscribe my channel for more. If you've ever found yourself in a situation like this, where someone tried to create doubt in your mind about your partner or relationship, comment yes below. I'd love to hear your story and offer support. Thank you.